As 2025 drew to a close, Vladimir Putin and his cronies were trying to convince the West that the fall of Ukraine was inevitable, and that a Russian-favoring peace should be declared before it was too late. This deliberate delusion doesn't align with what's really going on in the Ukraine war, and Ukraine has been quick to demonstrate that it's ready to hit Russia harder than it ever has before during the first week of 2026. The war that Putin started is spreading deep inside Russia. And the reason why is that Ukraine has enjoyed a great start to 2026 that has resulted in it scoring direct hits against some of the most valuable parts of Putin's war machine. On January 6th, news broke that Ukraine made the early hours of January 6th ones to remember for Putin, and for all the wrong reasons. During the night, Ukraine unleashed a massive storm of drones that traveled all around Russia, striking at key military targets while offering a reminder to Putin that the country he claims to be so weak still has plenty of gas left in its collective tank. We start with the Russian city of Penza. Located almost 400 miles southeast of Moscow, Penza experienced a series of explosions that rattled buildings and could be heard by residents throughout the night. These strikes didn't target residential buildings, however. Military reports that local residents claim that Ukraine's drones did their damage on the territory of several local enterprises, some of which are likely serving Putin's war effort. All told, around 10 explosions were heard in the city, including one that was captured in a 4-second clip. The video doesn't show much. We see no explosions or flames rising into the sky, but we hear a massive explosion in the distance, as filmed by an exasperated Penza resident. Presumably, this wasn't the first explosion that the civilian had heard. Why else would he be filming out of his window if he hadn't heard others and was then trying to capture the evidence on tape? Military adds that other residents reported seeing bright flashes in the sky, particularly over the eastern portion of the town, while yet more heard the telltale buzzing of drones flying overhead just prior to these explosions. So what did Ukraine hit? It appears there may have been several targets. Military says that monitoring channels have reported that Ukraine hit the town's Biumin factory, as highlighted in photographs shared by escalation. There are also suggestions that Ukraine hit a local bearing factory along with a facility named GATP-2 Penza. The latter target may be the most important. Military reports the facility offers rentals and management of commercial real estate, meaning several Russian businesses operate thanks to the company's work. Do some of those businesses have ties to Putin's military machine? We don't know for sure, though it seems safe to assume that they may, given that Ukraine appears to have targeted GATP-2 Penza. Astra has confirmed the likelihood of the latter strike in a Telegram post in which it highlighted scorched earth that may be the result of a drone explosion. However, Euromaidan Press says that there is no word from local authorities about the Ukrainian attack or what damage it may have done. It wasn't too long after the Penza strike that reports started flooding in about Ukraine's drones potentially hitting another target. At around 5 a.m. local time, Ukraine's drones reached the Republic of Bashkortostan, Military reports. What followed was a series of explosions in the Republic's city of Sterlitamak, which just so happens to be the location of the Sterlitamak oil and gas chemical plant. This massive petrochemical plant is one that Ukraine has targeted before. Back in November, Ukraine's drones scored enough hits at the plant to cause a series of explosions. Russia, of course, claimed to have shot down the pair of drones, adding that the fires and explosions were caused by fragments that fell onto the plant's territory. That's an unlikely story, especially when taking into account photographs shared by Military that show massive plumes of smoke rising from several points in the plant. The plant, which is around 1,300 kilometers or a little over 800 miles away from the border that Ukraine shares with Russia, is an obvious military target. It produces a host of products, ranging from aviation gasoline to rubber and lonol. The latter is the brand name for an antioxidant that is used as a stabilizer for kerosene-based Jet A1 fuel, meaning it's pretty important to the aircraft that Russia is using to launch glide bombs and missiles into Ukraine. It's unknown if Ukraine managed to score any hits against the plant that were quite like those it managed in November during its January strike. As Euromaidan Press says, locals reported blasts, but there's no footage to indicate that the plant was taken out. Excelenova has shared a short video on Telegram. However, it doesn't show much. We see a shot of a local street, which stays in place for the entire video, with only the sound of a massive explosion somewhere in the distance serving as proof that Ukraine's drones were in Sterlitamak. Still, even if the plant wasn't hit, Ukraine's intent seems clear. It wanted to take out another of the many links in Russia's military supply chain. The night of horror was far from over for Russia, as Ukraine's drones were also reported over Russia's Kostroma region. In its January 6th report, Militani says that Ukraine's drones attacked the 100th arsenal of the main missile and artillery directorate in that region, and it looks like the success of Ukraine's drones has been confirmed in this instance. Exilanova Plus was among the first to highlight what Ukraine had hit. It shared a post on Telegram showing smoke rising from the location of the arsenal, along with a caption that read, "Also this night the 100th arsenal of the GRAU in the city of Naya, Kostroma region was successfully attacked." The outlet added, there were doubts about the defeat because the bangs continued all night, but the governor confirmed the evacuation from the locations closest to the GRAU, before stating that this was far from Ukraine's first attack on the site, though it appears to be among the most successful. Further confirmation came from Ukraine's own General Staff of the Armed Forces. In a Facebook post, where it's also shared an image of the smoke caused by a fire at the arsenal, the General Staff said that the goal is hit and went on to explain why taking out this particular target was so important. 100th Arsenal of GRAU, a warehouse complex of durable storage of ammunition, which is part of the system of providing ground troops, airborne forces and military forces of Russia, the General Staff explained, before adding, the facility performs the functions of accounting, maintenance, storage and preparation for unloading of artillery munitions, as well as tactical and operational tactical level missiles. In practice, this means that the target Ukraine hit in Kostroma is essentially a storage facility that takes delivery of portions of Russia's ammunition stocks as and when they're needed. Now the Kostroma facility is burning. Russia may well have lost ammunition that it intended to send to its soldiers on the front lines in Ukraine. Every piece of ammunition that those forces don't receive amounts to the relieving of some of the pressure created by Russia's constant assaults against Ukraine's defenses. After all, Russian attackers become a lot less dangerous when their rifles don't have bullets and their artillery is out of shells. The Kyiv Independent also reported on this particular strike, noting that it was carried out by the Alpha unit of the Security Service of Ukraine, or SBU. An SBU source who spoke to the outlet says that the initial drone strike was far from the only damage caused to the targeted arsenal. A series of secondary explosions that were the result of ammunition detonating at the facility rang out all night, the source said. Ukraine's strike in Kostroma was also impressive because, like the Sterlitamak attack, it saw Ukraine's drones travel an exceptionally long distance to reach their targets. This time, the drones flew about 900 kilometers, or almost 560 miles. These sorts of long-range strikes have only been made possible as Ukraine has evolved its long-range drone technology over the last few years, and they showcase that the country's deep strike potential has gone far beyond anything that Putin would have anticipated in even his most far-flung nightmares. And still, Ukraine wasn't done. In the same January 6th report in which it confirmed the Kostroma strike, the Kyiv Independent also revealed that the SBU's Alpha unit allegedly carried out a successful strike in Russia's Lipetsk region. Lying just south of Moscow and about 250 kilometers or 155 miles away from Ukraine, this oblast is close enough to Russia's capital that any strike there serves as a reminder to Putin that Ukraine could also hit Moscow at any time. However, this most recent strike in Lipetsk wasn't about sending a message, it was more practical than that. According to the Kyiv Independent, Ukraine's target was the large oil facility located in the Lipetsk city of Uzman, and it appears that Ukraine may have hit what it intended to hit. During the morning of January 6th, the Lipetsk regional governor, Igor Artamanov, confirmed that a fire had started at what he vaguely referred to as an industrial facility in Uzman. That vagueness was made pointless by the Uzman municipality, which reported that the oil facility had indeed been hit and that firefighters were still fighting the blaze that Ukraine's drones caused at 2 p.m. More confirmation, if any were needed, also came from the Ukrainian Army's General Staff. Taking to Facebook, the General Staff said, within measures to reduce the military economic potential of the Russian aggressor on the night of January 6th, the units of the Defense Forces of Ukraine ignited a fire on the Gerkon Plus oil base in the area of the settlement of the Sterlitamak Farms, Lipetsk region of the Russian Federation. Explosions were recorded, as was a fire, and the General Staff is still working to confirm the details related to the damage that the SBU's drones caused. UA Wire also reported on the Lipetsk strike, noting that Artamanov had stated that there were no casualties at the site. The same outlet also revealed that Russia is taking its usual approach of attempting to claim the country's air defenses prevented Ukraine from doing any damage directly. According to Russia's defense ministry, the night of January 6th saw 129 of Ukraine's drones get destroyed or otherwise intercepted over Russian territory. The ministry makes no mention of the many explosions that could only have been caused by Ukraine's drones hitting their targets, or the fires that have been recorded at several locations. Euromaidan Press says that Artamanov has since claimed that the damage done in Lipetsk was the result of the fall of a drone. He's probably right. The fire seen in the short video that the same outlet shares was likely caused by a drone falling. Only that drone would have fallen precisely as Ukraine planned it to fall, scoring a direct hit on the Lipetsk oil facility in the process. There is also a possibility that Ukraine did even more damage on January 6th than we've already reported. Euromaidan Press says that the reports of drones appearing near other sensitive sites were also made during the night. In Yaroslavl, the sounds of explosions were heard in the Neftestroy district, which happens to be the home of more Russian oil facilities. However, there is no confirmation of Ukraine scoring any hits against Russian facilities in that region at the time of this video's creation. Ukraine's drones also struck in the region of Tver with sad consequences. It appears that a Ukrainian drone was shot down in that region, resulting in it crashing into a residential building, where it killed one person and injured two others. Ukraine was likely trying to hit the Tver railcar plant, which is less than a mile from where the drone crashed. Other Ukrainian drones were downed in Russia's Voronezh and Leningrad oblasts. The former was shot down over railway tracks, leading to the debris causing delays to several trains, in addition to damaging what the local governor would only describe as an infrastructure project. In Leningrad, one of Ukraine's drones supposedly crashed as a result of Russian electronic warfare, with the drone crashing near a compressor station in the region. These last two reports are based on information provided by Russian authorities, so it will be interesting to see if any information about successful strikes in these regions emerges in the coming days. January 6th was a busy night for Ukraine, along with Russia's air defenses. But if Putin thinks that there will soon be a calm that arrives after this massive storm, he may be in for a rude awakening. January 6th wasn't the first time that Ukraine unleashed a horde of long-range drones onto Russian territory since the beginning of the year. Far from it, in fact, as Ukraine seems intent on trying to match Russia and its own intensified drone strikes shot for shot as long as possible. That was revealed by Reuters on January 4th as it reported that Ukraine has kicked off 2026 by launching drone strikes against Russia on every day of the year so far. Moscow hasn't escaped this aerial wrath. Russia's capital has been among those daily targets, suggesting that Ukraine is shifting its strategy. In the past, it's intended to target Moscow on symbolic dates, likely to send a message to Putin. Now Russia's capital is included in daily strikes that are closing airports and elsewhere in Russia, causing massive damage to key military and energy-related facilities. On January 5th, United 24 media followed up on this Reuters report by highlighting that Ukraine was outpacing Russia when it comes to long-range drone assaults. Russian state media claimed that more than 1,500 Ukrainian drones were intercepted over Russia and temporarily occupied Crimea in just the past week. While those figures cannot be independently verified, they underscore the growing tempo of Ukrainian long-range operations, the outlet said. The Guardian adds that by midnight on January 4th, Russia's defense ministry was already claiming that it had shot down 57 over the Moscow region, out of 437 downed across Russia. Now you can add another 129 to that number of Ukrainian drones that Russia claims to have shot down in 2026, assuming you believe what Russia claims. One thing is for certain, Ukraine has upped the tempo of its drone strikes. Going daily with these types of attacks means that Ukraine is going all in on a long-range strategy that started in 2024, began to mature in 2025, and now seems to be reaching its zenith in 2026. Every drone that Ukraine sends Russia's way is intended to disrupt military logistics, shatter energy infrastructure, and cause massive financial pain to Russia, which is already struggling after nearly 4 years of war. Ukrainian intelligence is already claiming that Russia is rapidly moving toward a recession, the New Voice of Ukraine wrote on January 5th. That recession will likely begin before July 2026 and is supposedly impossible for Russia to avert. With its increased number of drone strikes, Ukraine is trying to send Russia into economic oblivion sooner than even these estimates suggest that the country will fall off the financial cliff. But can Ukraine manage to sustain this monster start to its 2026 deep strike campaign? It's tough to say for certain, though there are certainly plenty of signs that Ukraine has been planning this intensification of its long-range assaults for a while. During the course of 2025, the country ramped up its production of long-range drones consistently, with at least one of its manufacturers now at the point where it's building several thousand of the types of drones that are hitting Russia on its own turf every month. According to Le Monde, that manufacturer is Firepoint, and it's building FP1 drones at a rate of more than 2,000 per month. These drones cost just €47,000 or about $55,000 to build, and they're capable of traveling up to 1,400 kilometers or around 870 miles. Assuming this 2,000 per month figure is accurate, then FP1s alone would give Ukraine the ability to launch between 60 and 70 drones at Russia per day. That's before accounting for other long-range drones that Ukraine builds, which will only add to the numbers. Supporting this massive uptick in long-range drone production is Ukraine's efforts to both build and acquire long-range missiles that it can use to hit targets inside Russia and occupied Ukraine. In a December 18th report, the BBC said that Ukraine is ramping up production of its Flamingo cruise missile, which is another Firepoint project. The outlet adds that nearly the entire inventory of Ukraine's long-range missiles is now domestically made. Joining those domestic missiles in 2026 will be US-made Extended Range Attack Munition, or ERAM, missile. Toward the end of August 2025, the US approved a possible FMS of up to 3,350 ERAM missiles, valued at about $825 million. That amounts to about $246,000 per missile, which is a pittance compared to the cost of other long-range munitions. For instance, the Tomahawk missiles that Ukraine was rumored to be on the verge of receiving at several points during 2025 cost $2.2 million per unit, according to the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Only a few of these 3,350 ERAMs will arrive in Ukraine in 2026. However, Militani reports that Ukraine expects to receive a trial batch of 10 of the missiles by October of this year, which will serve as a precursor for a larger batch of 840 that will come later. These missiles may also be usable by Ukraine's F-16s and MiG-29s, which is a big bonus. So, can Ukraine keep it up? The numbers for FP1 production alone are looking promising for Ukraine. Though we may not see the country hit Russia with drones every day of 2026, it may not be too far off from reaching that ambitious target. Russia now has a more intense, long-range threat to worry about than the one that Ukraine presented in 2025. The BBC says that the head of Ukraine's armed forces, Oleksandr Syrsky, claims that Ukraine's 2025 deep strikes cost the Russian economy over $21.5 billion. Ukraine seems to be on the right path to shattering that record in 2026. The spate of strikes on January 6th proves it. Apart from being a spent force, Ukraine may be on the verge of causing doom for Putin. All of the weapons that we just mentioned are just the starting point for what Ukraine is going to be receiving and using in 2026. Others may be coming, including fighter jets and sorely needed air defenses that could mitigate Russia's aerial assaults while enabling Ukraine's. Find out more in our video, and remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more coverage of Ukraine's lightning-fast start to its 2026 deep strike campaign against Russia. And thank you, as always, for watching.